Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching. If you are watching in my Facebook group Wellness for Women or watching back, then do feel free to comment, tag us. Myself and Rachel will come back and respond to any comments or questions. Love to know that you are here. So I am here, so excited, with Smithbone, and I'm going to ask Rachel to introduce herself. But just for people who don't know me, you might be catching in or catching up, should I say, on my YouTube channel. I'm Sally Eccleston. I'm a psychologist and yoga teacher specialising in mindset and menstrual health for women. And I'm here with Rachel. I'm going to let Rachel introduce herself. Welcome, Rachel. Thanks so much for being here. Would you love to introduce yourself and say a little bit about your beautiful business as well?
Oh, Dr. Sally. I love calling her that. I'm going to embarrass her. Thank you so much, Dr. Sally, for having me. I'm just in awe of your work and everything that you're sharing and putting out in the world. And been honoured to walk this path with you for the last year as we grow together. So yeah, hello, Dr. Sally's community. I'm going to keep saying it. My name's Rachel Smithbone. I have given myself the auspicious title of the High Priestess of Sacred Self-Love. Technically, I'm a yoga teacher, author, sound therapist, and energy worker. And I work in the space of sacred self-love. I work in the space of everything that I do is to support people to really just love and accept themselves as they are. But I'm a spiritual being, I'm a spiritual teacher, and that's always been my path, which is why for me, sacred self-love is a sacred act. Because when you love yourself, what you're actually loving is the cosmic dance of the divine that is asking to move through you. That's why it's sacred. And I know that that dance is different for everybody because my definition of sacred will be very different than yours, and that's okay. But it's about loving exactly who we are in this moment so that we expand into our own potential to be more. That's me. That's what I do. And my business.
Just in a short brief, I don't know if anyone can feel the power of that, but I just got goosebumps just from that beginning little section. And, you know, yeah, Rachel is a, powerful being, storyteller, healer. I literally have goosebumps. I mean, I'm cold, but I'm pretty sure it's goosebumps.
Is it because I managed to get 3 Dr. Sallys in 30 seconds though? Let's be real here.
Yes, one of the reasons I love Rachel dearly is because she insists on referring to me as Dr. Sally. I have a PhD, just in case you didn't know.
She's an actual doctor. She's not like the way I'm a priestess. Like, I've given myself that title. She's not given herself the title of doctor.
Yeah, not a health doctor, not a GP. I'm not about to come and save your life, but yes, Rachel has been a real healer in helping me step into my power, actually, and therefore helping other women step into their power. So thank you, Rachel.
So welcome.
So let's explore this idea of sacred self-love a little bit more. And where I'd love to start with it is your own journey with sacred self-love. Could you share a little bit about the path that you've walked and continue to walk and your journey here and what really got you into this divine idea of sacred self-love?
Absolutely. So I think for me, it's funny because the sacred part was effortless, but the self-love part was so far away from my experience of who I was. It was almost like I spent a lot of my life feeling like there was 2 parts to me. One part that was so unconfident and feeling unworthy and not where they wanted to be, never felt seen, never felt good enough, always felt shame about it. I always felt deep shame about my body not being good enough. Felt like I had this purpose, like there was something moving through me that I needed to share with the world, but did not feel any type of self-love. Then there was this other part that was like, I'm fucking amazing. Why can't the world see it? They need to, like, why is no one noticing how amazing I am? Like, why is this happening? And this part, so it always felt like the two parts were really at odds with each other. But growing up, I grew up, on a farm on the Exmoor National Park, and it's an ancestral farm. It's on like ancestral lands, it's on sacred lands. There's burial grounds all around here. There's a church that was clearly some kind of a grove before it was a church, and is over 1,000 years old in its incarnation as a church, let alone how many thousands of years it was used as a site of worship before that. And I always experienced very strong, I guess you would call them mystical experiences. But like many people in life, that's not something we talk about very much in the West. And it's not something, when you are of a scientific bent, which I am, I love science. I've got an inquisitive mind. I love to understand how things work. I love to understand it from a Western point of view. But at the same time, I've always had all of these experiences, which are not, they don't marry into our current scientific understanding. Although, side note, Dr. Sally, some of the research coming out from very forward thinking and technically gifted physicists and scientists at the moment is fascinating. And these are people who are like physicists at Princeton, Stanford, like top university. They're not Mickey Mouse pseudoscience people. So what's this is such a tangent, but I just love it. It's really fascinating that the science is slowly starting to catch up with what people who have had mystical experiences have always known. And both of us are yoga teachers. It's what the Upanishads talk about. It's what these ancient mystics talk about. So I grew up having these very strong spiritual experiences and not being able to talk to anyone about them. Feeling very sacred, feeling like I just felt so much joy, so much pain in every moment, feeling this deep connection with the earth and the land. And at the same time, so confused, because like, why is no one else, why do we live the way we live? I don't get it. I don't understand why we are living how we do. And as I got older, as happens to many people, boys came along. I was like, loved science, and that kind of, the two forced me to put my spirituality in a box for a while. Never went away, but it wasn't allowed out. And as I got older, I took it out of the box and it started to call me in a deeper way. But then I had a very bad experience where I was fully out of the box. I mean, dancing on the box, burning the box, burning the clothes, really going for it. And then my scientific friends really deeply shamed me. And so I resurrected the box and got firmly back inside, but took all my spiritual tools with me. So the sacred was very much in place, very much. However, the self-love has taken a very long time. I spent my formative years and my years since university and my working years before having my own business in quite corporate settings. And I was still studying the spiritual path, working with all of that work. And I knew that there was something in me that needed to come out. And it was painful because I felt so far away from my purpose, so far away from the truth of who I was. And I'm sure any of your folks watching this now, if that's you, your heart will be telling you right now, it'll be going, it'll be beating, it will be feeling that feeling of I'm not where I'm supposed to be. This isn't who I'm meant to be. So there was this pain and this disconnect, and there was this lack of self-love. But I always held strong to my belief that when it was time, it would be time. And that as a powerful being and a manifester, I would call in what I needed when I needed it. And that's exactly what's happened. So when I had my son 6 years ago now, I was working at Goldman Sachs in the chairman's office. So I had a super high flying job. And I quietly had crystals on my desk and I would manifest flights and all these things. So I was quietly integrating the two, but I was so far out of alignment with where I wanted to be. But I was also doing my yoga teacher training, which I dreamed about since I first stepped foot on the yoga mat, age 13. And I said, when I have my son, we're going to leave the city, we're going to come back to Exmoor, and I'm going to start a yoga business. And it was through the process of saying yes to yoga, yes to that business, yes to stepping up and finally being a teacher, that the journey of loving myself, truly loving myself, really started to unfold. And it's funny, as somebody who suffered their entire life from deep and painful and really toxic body shame, both from other people and then internalized, it never failed to make me laugh that I chose a career where I'd have to stand and parade my body in skin tight clothes in front of hordes of people. But it's,
yeah, hearing you with that.
And it brings up a lot of stuff, doesn't it? You know, it brings up a lot of stuff. I don't know if you felt it in your own journey as a yoga teacher, but a friend and I were reflecting the other day that as teachers, it's funny that often we are drawn to yoga because yoga makes you feel whole again, brings you home to that part of yourself that is true, that you feel to be true, that is expansive. And many of us, I won't say everybody, but I mean, tell me if you resonate with this, but many of us teaching yoga perhaps have struggled with our own feelings of worthiness and not enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's why part of the reason you get onto the mat in the first place, right? 100%. Yeah, and the process, the journey of feeling at home in your body is so huge. And I mean, you know, Rach, this is like one of the reasons I wanted to do these series of conversations, to kind of say to people, no matter what your background is, or no matter how corporate your previous career has been, or, you know, the wellbeing practitioners, the wellbeing world is not as far off as you might think it is. If you're sitting behind a desk job or an office job that you may love or you may hate, or somewhere in between, but everyone has their own path, right? And I think, I think feeling at home in yourself and in your body is huge. And I've definitely been on a big journey around body shame, and still now, you know, at different phases in my menstrual cycle as well, like that can come up for me. And I think the issue of diversity in the yoga and wellbeing world is still one that there's a lot of work to do there. And I actually came up over the weekend for me because I've just done my second weekend of training for my new practice that I'm sharing, Shake the Dust, and we spent a first hour on Sunday talking about lack of diversity, you know, just how white the yoga world is, how white, and
it's ironic, right? Given where it's come from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And just the work that's going in, and it's a difficult question, right? Because you're even around body, I think body image questions, like you're scared of saying the wrong thing. Some people are scared of having that conversation. You know, it's like, how do you set up a space which is truly welcoming and diverse of everyone? And when I look at some of the studios that I've either worked with or you know, attended or been affiliated with previously, are they inclusive? Are they white, generally speaking? Are there any attempts to bring on board a diverse teaching team, you know, including people of all body shapes and sizes? Not really. And you know, what does that say about the work that's going into the yoga world? I think it's a big issue, and I think actually there are some real kind of thought leaders and some people that I really respect that are actually moving away from using the word yoga or yoga teacher. Like,
I'm feeling like that myself.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel that what I teach, I when I stand in truth, I don't even know that I can call myself a yoga teacher anymore. I'm qualified as a yoga teacher, but it's not actually, I teach embodied movement, heart connection, and love, like sacred self-love, but it's not, the sacred is uniquely personal. It's not, it might, you know, for a Christian, it might be the love of God is what you turn to. You see yourself within God's image. For somebody who's non-dual, which means that, for the benefit of the people watching who may or may not know this, non-dualism is where you believe that we are all one, versus God made us, he is separate from us, I'm not God, but I am God's creation. Like, that's the difference. One is separation, one is unity. So yeah, I think you're right. There's really important conversations going on, and I feel the same. There's a lot of people I very much respect who have claimed that. They've said, you know what, it's not my lineage, it's not my spiritual faith, it's not my ancestral history, actually. And I don't know about you, but the problem I see is that we're like spiritual orphans in the West. We're like spiritual orphans because our true spirituality was lost a very, very long time ago. And whilst Christianity in its essence and in its path of, when it's in its light expression rather than its shadow, it is a beautiful thing. However, it's been corrupted over so many hundreds of years, and many people purporting to be in that faith actually are not kind, they're not loving, they're not compassionate. And I'm definitely not saying that's as a generalization of the faith, because it's not, but it is a truth that's out there that needs to be acknowledged. So yeah, I feel like we're spiritual orphans, and yoga in its diluted form that we've inherited it over here has been something that we can connect to. But maybe it's time that we actually claim something for ourselves and grow into our own lineage, grow into our own embodiment of what it means in the Western world in 2021, in a time of great flux, create a collective pain, an outpouring of collective fear. So many people are waking up to something deeper and looking for where that is. God, sorry, you've got me off on a tangent now. Conversation.
No, but it's really powerful. Yeah, really powerful. And what does yoga mean in the 21st century? What does yoga mean post-COVID? Do we move away from the word yoga? You know, I really feel strongly that it's so important not to create this us and them philosophy, you know, and I think there's always a risk of, you are always going to have, well, for the short-term future anyway, yoga spaces that stay pretty much as they are, you know. So does that mean that you kind of move away from that and then have something happening with those sorts of yoga spaces happening over there? Like, I don't think that's quite the way to go either. I think we need this unity, and we need to be asking difficult conversations. We really need to be asking ourselves what it means to be authentic. It means to really speak in truth and not kind of ignore all these issues that are happening around, you know, Black people or people of other ethnic minorities not feeling welcome in a yoga studio space. You know, what's that about? Like, is it that we start to open up more community spaces or community centres? But as someone said, a friend of mine over the weekend, which is so true, this is not a question to be sat and discussed by white people in groups to solve the issue, you know. And
exactly,
with the best intentions, it's it's definitely good to be asking the questions, but it needs that diverse and eclectic response, I think, for people's voices to be heard. Because for a long time, people's voices have not been heard, and COVID has not helped with 100%. But just to go back to the body shaming, so yeah, for me, I think I did a post about it on Instagram quite recently, but being on,
I saw that one actually.
yeah, being on recordings is been a huge thing, because that was not part of my life. Like, you know, I showed up to places, or since 2017 anyway, showed up to places, taught live. Yeah, had some issues that I was still working with around body image, body shame. But being on video all the time has definitely brought up a lot for me, and also having a sense of, like, in my 30s, what it means to be healthy, you know, nearing the point of considering having children, and all the things that can evolve from that with body image. So I think it's always shifting, isn't it, is what I'm trying to say. And the different situations you find yourself in, and the beliefs that you think maybe you've kind of looked at and healed and grown from, sometimes those things come back, right?
Spiral around, don't they?
Yeah. Life is cyclical. So let's speak a little bit more about this, the kind of the body image, or body, how would you call it, the body shaming or body image work, and how you bring that into your work at the moment as well around sacred self-love.
Ooh. Do you know what? I just embody it.
Yeah,
that's what I do.
The only way. Yeah,
I literally just show up as me in my body, which is big and round and full, and not the body people are used to seeing as yoga teachers. And many of my students feel at home because they see me laughing and joking and just truly loving themselves as I am, exactly as I am, frolicking. Like, it was a really big deal for me recently, because I've wanted to go cold water swimming for the last 2 years. And it's taken me 2 years to just say yes to that. And suddenly, on a sunny but freezing cold morning in March, my soul would not accept no for an answer. And that was it. I found myself down on the beach with the local swim group in my little black swimming costume. And I'm, like everybody, COVID has not been kind to my waistline. I've just not cared. I eat so many vegetables. I exercise. I love alcohol. I love chocolate. I love making cakes with the children. And I just enjoy all of that stuff. And then that has an effect on your physical body. But I realized when I was down at that beach and there were men around, imagine my fat body in front of a man in a swimming costume. How dare I not be the sex symbol that I should be? And it was only afterwards that I realized I hadn't even thought about it. I just took my kit off, got myself ready. I was like, I'm going in. It was only afterwards when I saw the picture of myself, like cellulite everywhere, massive thighs, huge big belly, beaming grin, chatting to this bloke, getting ready to go in, that I thought, wow, it never entered my mind once to think about my body. Never once. And I keep thinking back to poor 20-something Rachel when I was in my 20s and I was living in France. We went cycling. We went cycling down in the south of France, and we stayed at my friend's mum had a gîte, which is like a holiday home, and it had this beautiful pool. And I can still feel the shame eating inside my heart, knowing I was going to have to get into a swimming costume in the pool in front of everyone, in front of all those boys, with all the other girls who just had normal girls' bodies. That deep, because I've just always been in a bigger body, and people have always commented on it, like comments in the street, like I'd be going along and I have once had a group of lads in a car stop by the lights and lean out and shout, "Nice ass, bit big though." Like, that a compliment or an insult? I don't even understand what you're saying there, but it was not.
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's horrible that people feel they can comment on your body like that. So that moment, thinking back to that 20-something Rachel, and that Rachel in her little swimming suit, posting pictures all over Facebook, and the amount of women that reached out to me to say, I never thought I could do that, but seeing you do it, I know that I can. And that is how I do it.
That's why you do it as well.
That is what I hope that baby Rachel of this generation will see that and will be like, look at her. She's beautiful. She's fierce. She's got her own business. She's helping people. And look at her. If she can do that, I'm okay the way I am too.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And for me, that's really making me feel into my own kind of processes and thought patterns and beliefs around diet and exercise and body shapes and women's body shapes, because so my partner could just eat whatever he wanted, right, and not put on weight. I mean, he works out, so he works out 3 times a week and he loves working out. But I heard something recently about the difference. I think it was over this weekend of training again. There's the difference between men and women, with men and this whole thing about testosterone and, you know, gyms filled of men. But the key difference is that men feel good. I'm not saying women don't feel good from working out, but men feel good from testosterone. Broadly speaking, men feel like they can put stuff out into the world, that they're ready for action. And that kind of comes from, you know, like ancient tribal times when men had to go out and fight and find the food and kill animals, and they were full of testosterone to do that, right? But women, in order to be in a creative, self-fulfilling, nurturing place, completely different on a hormonal level. Women really need rest as a sacred practice, self-care on a hormonal level as well. I'm not just talking about the kind of, you know, the archetypes and the theories, like on a hormonal scientific level. There is such a key difference between women and men, and I think that idea is not understood or conveyed a lot within the fitness world. So
can I just stop you there a sec?
Yeah.
Dr. Sally, I feel like I just got educated there, because my understanding of the hormonal aspect of the cycle is very basic. And I've never made that connection, because I teach what I call intentional rest. I've introduced it into my work, my membership, so that they have a gentle flow class on a Tuesday, and then they have an intentional rest class, and it is deep rest, it's yin, it's restorative, it's yoga nidra. And I do teach mostly women, but there are also men in it as well that come. And I'd never thought to separate out the genders in terms of hormones. So thank you. I can't wait till we do the mirror of this and I get to pick your brains on this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, this is why you see so many women who are creators of the world. So whether it's like creator of a book or training or whatever it is, why they take themselves and have space, whereas men don't necessarily, they might still do that, but they don't necessarily need that in the same way that women do.
Like Virginia Woolf, a room of her own.
Yeah, exactly. And I just feel like there's so much kind of this idea in the wellness and the fitness world that men and women are going to be doing exactly the same, exactly the same. And I think that there is some understanding that, women build strength in different ways, or I think there is an understanding of a gender difference, but not so much in a way that's orientated towards the energetics and self-care. because I still have a routine of working out and cardio, and I think there's also something about being a yoga teacher and feeling like you have to be the face of and the body of being a yoga teacher, and what that means and what that conveys and what you're showing to the world. And
wrestled with that.
Yes, and let's face it, you know, a lot of yoga practices are not cardio. They're not. It's not a workout unless, you know, you're doing kind of real dynamic practices where you can get the heart beating, and that's really beneficial as well. But for me, understanding what movement means, and also just understanding that what I put into my body affects my energy and how I feel, and that's the main thing that I'm bothered about. You know, like, am I able to lose a few pounds? Like, if I really wanted to, and if it was in my best interests, like, could I do that? Yes. But what's really important to me is that what I've put into my body, whether it's excess sugar or whatever it is, has affected how I've been feeling, and therefore how much I've been able to engage with the world at my full potential. And that's the main thing. And I think it's going to be a big issue for a lot of people coming out of COVID. You know, this whole thing of the corona stone and people wanting to get back into exercise. And I've been speaking to a lot of people about just not necessarily returning to the things that you might have felt were really enjoyable before. Like, yes, of course, do things that you love, but we need to understand, I think, how to respond to the pandemic, and also understanding maybe mixing things up a little bit, or trying new things, or feeling that people are coming out of the pandemic with a renewed sense of self rather than a depleted sense of self. That's what I would love, and what I hope is going to be true for some people. But it's a huge issue, isn't it? Women's bodies and women inhabiting their bodies is just, yeah, it's so powerful, and so much shame, and I'm sure you would agree, kind of ancestral shame as well, you know, what lies in the maternal lineage. Is that something that you've sort of explored or stepped into at all?
Not really, because I'm a very different, my female ancestral lineage has a very different relationship with their bodies than I do. Like, my mum is, she's incredibly beautiful, and she's also of a very, she loves sugar, but she's never really had a problem with her weight like I have. And she's a very different shape than I am, so she carries all of her weight around her belly. I carry it around my hips and thighs. And her mum was the same. They're just very moderate. They're very moderate, and it's not a thing for them. Their stuff's different stuff. The stuff they're carrying is different stuff. But I'd really love to actually go back, if you're available for it. I'd love to go back and touch on what you're saying about the way we come out of this time of inner reflection, this time of collective pain and fear that we're all coming out of. And actually, when you ask me, how do I teach loving your body? And just for the record, for anyone listening, loving yourself isn't just about loving your body, it's part of it, but you're not your body. Your body is a vehicle that carries your soul. But when you're at war with your body, you're still at war with your soul, but it's only part of the equation. Your mind, you're not your mind either. Your mind is part of the equation, but it's not you. So we'll come back to that, I'm sure. But what I just wanted to come back to how we work with the body, and because it really mirrors what my approach really mirrors what you're saying, and I think might be helpful for people. So I really encourage people to because this is what I've done in my own life, I really encourage people to examine their relationship with movement. Examine their motivation every time they step on the mat, they go for a run, they go for a swim, whatever it is they love to do. Examine your relationship with it. Is there any energy of guilt, punishment, offsetting? I've had a sugar donut today, so I need to offset it by doing an extra mile. Any of that energy, because that is not the energy of love. That's a very different frequency. And when you approach your movement practices as a spiritual embodiment to allow joy and love to move through every cell of your body, suddenly it just becomes an expression of who you are. And it's a very different energy to carry into your movement practices. You know, when you go for you go for a run, when you go for a run because you're trying to burn off calories or because you think you need it to be healthy, you're actually disconnecting from your essence. You're imposing something on your body rather than expressing through your body. When you approach that run as, do you know what? I want to feel alive. I want to feel the wind on my skin. I want to feel my own heart racing in my chest, my vitality bursting out of me. You can probably, even in my voice, you can feel the difference in the energy that you bring to that very same activity. So I really do encourage people to be real with yourself. What energy are you bringing to this? And can you just change the lens slightly? Can you embrace more of the acceptance, more of the love? If you love, one of the things I love for my body is I love to put my washing up gloves on, put Florence and the machine on, do the dishes and shake my ass. And it's not I'm normally by the end of it, I'm sweating, I'm puffing, I'm singing, and I feel high as a kite. And it's not about doing my cardio. It's about being full, being embodied, being expressed. So yeah, that is the other way that I really try and encourage people to think of it, because I work, you know, we attract the people we can serve, right? And I had the only exercise I love walking, I love dancing, I love yoga, and I used to love riding horses. But none of them are kind of hard workouts. And I was always made to feel like I should be doing something different than what I was, instead of just loving what my body loves to do. And I think, sorry, just to go on with one more thing, that's like what you touched upon about how you nurture your body. Actually, anytime when we're looking at it from an external point of view, rather than like you said of, okay, I've just smashed, like yesterday I went and had the most delicious custard cream donut. It was wonderful. I felt amazing eating this thing. It was brilliant. But if then afterwards I'd felt shit for the rest of the afternoon, like it's not about denying yourself. It is about understanding from a holistic perspective what actually works for your body. Because you might have had that custard donut and been like, oh my God, I've got no energy. I feel absolutely terrible. I just want to eat some, kale now or whatever. But it is about, instead of externalizing what we're told we should be doing, it's about becoming so accepting and knowing and intimate with ourselves that we learn exactly how we need to nourish ourselves on every level. Movement, food, people, what we consume in terms of news, what we consume in terms of literature, all of it. Nourishing our own energy field according to our own wisdom. And that takes what you and I both teach. It takes getting to know yourself. It takes slowing down. It takes doing the work.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Love all of that so much. And it really resonates with me, you know, from someone who has been a gym person, and I'm actually considering signing up to, I have to say, like, I wouldn't do anything else apart from a really nice gym after COVID, like pool and sauna. But it can be really complex to unpick, right, Rach? Like tuning into, because me personally, I have had a lot of stories around punishment and feeling that I have to work out to keep fit, or that I have to do a certain number of, you know, strength-based exercises or cardio-based exercises or whatever it is. I used to do triathlons, I used to run, I've run half marathons, all that. And I actually stopped it because, not kind of like really abruptly, I still run now, but I stopped it because I could feel that I was doing it because I felt I had to do it.
There you go.
Yeah.
That is the point. That is
Yeah.
exactly the point. That's the difference in the energy, is that there's what you've identified is a more severe energy towards yourself than a loving one.
Yes.
And the same activity, you can be doing those triathlons and those runs from a very different energy of, so
but I was going to use the example of, like, if I get to the end of a working day, whether I've been out and about or whether I've been in my home all day, and for me, sometimes there's a mixture of things going on. So sometimes I have the belief that, oh, I haven't really worked out since whatever, Saturday, so I feel like I should today. But there's also a sense of, at a soul level, I know that I am in tune with, to a certain extent, of what my body is craving. And sometimes I start, or I think I want to do something at the beginning of the day and it's completely changed by the end of the day. Or sometimes I start something and I'm like, no, not for me, which is why I actually prefer doing, I mean, I do hour things, but I prefer doing shorter chunks, especially with strength and things like that. So there's a lot to unpick there, isn't there? A lot around, you can have that feeling of, I know that this is what's going to help me to feel alive, but you can also have the thought at the same time, oh, but also I should do this. I think it doesn't, just because you feel that you're pushing yourself, not, is pushing the right word, but just because you feel that you're pushing yourself into something doesn't mean that it's also not going to make you feel alive. Because sometimes when I go for a run in the morning, there is so much entangled there for me around running and around doing it for races or doing it, you know, as part of an event, but also knowing that I am going to feel alive by the end. Not always. Sometimes I feel knackered and it hasn't really done me much good. But there is such a process there, isn't there, about being in tune with. And sometimes I just get into water for a swim because I want to be connected with water. I don't have a sense of like how I'm going to feel necessarily by the end, but that for me is more of like a nature connection or an element connection thing, I think. And sometimes you have those days where you do just want to move and you have to kind of watch that unfold, don't you, for yourself?
Yeah.
Like you take yourself into a practice and you're like, okay, I know that I just want to get on my yoga mat or whatever it is, and you have no idea about what's going to emerge from that. So there's a lot in there, isn't there, about being in tune with yourself?
Yeah, there absolutely is a lot in there. And you're right, it often goes hand in hand. It's like, I'm doing this because I know I should do it, but also historically, I know that I'm going to feel really good when I do it.
Yeah.
It's so true. But I just think sometimes when we identify, it's actually, no, let me rephrase that. It's awareness, isn't it? Because for many people, like, you're a very self-aware person and you know that those two are entangled. But there'll be people listening here who will never have thought about the energy that they bring to their movement practice.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it really is just starting to bring that awareness to know yourself, because it might be that you know that there's something punishing going on, but actually you don't want to change it just yet. Actually, you're still getting more from forcing yourself than you are from not, because it takes a lot to get to a place where you just really know what your body needs in the moment. Like, God, you know, you talked about spiraling round. That's definitely something I'm continue to spiral around and around on. Like, what's the optimal way for me to care for my body in any moment?
Yeah, movement, and I think our relationship with movement is so huge. And yeah, that is so valuable, what you've brought about, the energy that you bring to it, because also I think that can affect not only your choices, but also how you are and how you feel as a result. Like, it's the whole thing wrapped up.
Exactly it.
Yeah, so exactly the same practice, different energies, different people, completely different experience. Also, you know, I really believe that movement has so much potential to open up stuff, and I'm seeing that in teaching and practicing Shake the Dust, actually, just as an example. But there is that degree of being open and receptive to, and not just treating the practice as a cardio or as yoga, although there might be elements of that. Yeah, because our body, I know that we've kind of spoken about you not being your body and your body being a vehicle, which I agree with, but I also agree with the fundamental idea that when you open things up from your body and working with the energies in your body, then that's like the starting point for so many people to get to the energetic, to get to the emotional, to get to the spiritual. Yeah, it's not all about sitting in meditation to access all of this as a spiritual practice.
Completely agree with you on that.
Yeah,
100% agree. And you know, we all know the famous book, The Body Keeps the Score, which is a book about trauma and how that's held in the body.
Yeah,
so, yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. And but I think that goes back to my point though about, or in my mind at least, as somebody who has struggled with their relationship to their body, when movement becomes something about another thing to make me not feel good enough. That's what I've had historically. Movement and exercise have been another should, another must, another thing that I felt I wasn't measuring up because I wasn't doing what I was told I needed to be doing. I wasn't doing the cardio. I wasn't doing the weights. I wasn't going to the gym. And what I was doing wasn't good enough because that was not what is recommended. It's not what the external authorities are telling me my body needs to be healthy. So that's what I'm trying to say for somebody like, or for me personally, as someone who suffered with a lot of body shame, is movement became something that wasn't a joy. It was something that was another thing where I didn't feel good enough. And so looking at the energy that I approach it with has allowed me to reclaim that as someone who's not very fit, doesn't enjoy extreme sports, but actually still loves to be in their body, needs to be in their body, needs to move it through, needs to dance it out, walk it out, all those things. So yeah, I 100% agree that we live in this body. It houses us.
Yeah.
And it affects everything. Like it affects our hormonal balance, you know, how our energy levels. And you see, going back to my work in sacred self-love, like one of the reasons I call it sacred self-love is that I see so many people on a deep spiritual path who are not in their bodies and loving their body. They're very disconnected.
Yes, yeah, 100%. And yeah, that is such a journey of reclaiming your power as well, and everyone reclaiming their power. Yeah, and this whole thing about like you say, having the institutions around telling us what is good for us or what may not be good for us, and a certain amount of exercise that you should be doing to be healthy. And yeah, it's patriarchal, really, isn't it? And in essence, and I think it's really valuable to bring an awareness to that. Like, it's great to have that support to a certain extent around health in society generally, but yeah, completely not when it gets to the extent of people solely relying on that, of a sense of what does health mean to me, what does feeling well mean to me, you know, just relying on what the doctors told them to do, or what the NHS recommended guidelines are, or even what a personal trainer tells you. You know, no disrespect to personal trainers doing some incredible work in the world, but there's a lot of being told what to do, right?
Yeah. And even us as yoga teachers, certainly I know the way I teach, I always telling my students, look, listen to your body first. If you're tired and it's not feeling good, ignore me and rest.
Yeah.
Rest. Don't do it. If it doesn't feel good in your body, don't do it. This practice is about coming home to your own wisdom. It's not about delegating it to me. It's about you claiming it and owning it for yourself, claiming that power back, exactly like you say.
Yes.
But this is really interesting, because it's really making me think, like, because I do know some people who have not had great relationships with their body and really have found themselves through running and things like that. And I always think, like, that's the point, is that, you know, for one person, running a triathlon will be the most empowering thing. Yeah. Finding that discipline to train for 3 hours every day makes them stand in their power and be who they are. Yeah. And that's the magic for me. That's the magic of loving yourself, is actually giving yourself permission to find that out for yourself. Are you the one that loves to run the triathlon and loves to push themselves and see what their body can do? Are you the one that wants to dance in her knickers and rubber gloves to Florence and the Machine in the kitchen? But, like, be you, whichever it is, just do you.
Yeah, and own it as well.
Own it. Own it, exactly. Own it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and there's no there's never ever any one size fits all approach, is there? But like you say, it's just the energy that you bring towards it is super powerful. And I have to say, I have to watch my own kind of criticisms and judgments, not only towards myself, but towards others, because there's so many different forms of movement. And, you know, when I speak to other women about increasing their activity level and running or walking, and I have to say, there is a part of me that's like, oh, well, like, maybe you should be doing something different, right? I will freely admit that. There's like it kind of is a tiny voice that creeps in, and I'm like, no, come on, Sally, like, that's ridiculous. But it's there, right? Like, even with the best of intentions, like, there's so much value in just being aware of your own patterns and your own relationship over time with exercise and movement, you know, like, and actually it's really in line with what I speak to people about their own period story. You know, what kind of messages did you receive as a child? Like, how did you first find exercise and movement? How, you know, what kinds of things did you used to or were forced to do at school? What kinds of things have you always enjoyed and maybe stopped doing? How have you ever found a sense of fun and play through movement? You know, what kind of movement do you do with your children, if anything? What kind of thing do you do that you consider to be a restful movement? And I just think, kind of going back to, in a circle, back around to our conversation about what is yoga, and this idea that's becoming more and more uncomfortable to me, actually, is I go to a yoga class or I teach a yoga class where everyone is coming to me, or I'm listening to the teacher for exactly what I should be doing in that class. Like, I don't know about that, Rach. I don't know about that idea, because like, can you learn from teachers? 100%. Is there value in going to classes? 100%. And the most powerful classes I've been in is where people are empowered to do their own thing to a certain extent, and to listen to themselves, and to challenge themselves when they want to, and to rest when they want to. That is like a powerhouse yoga class, definitely. And that's what I would love to see more of coming out of COVID as well. Not just this kind of uniform, like, this is what you should do when you're in my class, or this is what I should be doing when I go to a class. Like,
this is the correct alignment in Trikonasana.
Yeah.
Oh, but hang on, my pelvis is different than yours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a completely human being to you, actually.
Yeah.
If you're a man or you're of different genders, but yeah, really, really, really powerful stuff. Okay, I would love to be moving towards the part of the conversation where we talk about your words of wisdom for women or men beginning a journey of sacred self-love. What that might look like, how they might take their first steps, anything you could offer on that question.
And she was silent. Oh, that is a question. That is a real, you even told me you're going to ask me beforehand. And I was like, I'll figure it out. At the time I was thinking, I like to start with two principles. One is acceptance. And I've had many a debate with my husband about whether acceptance or awareness should come first. He argues awareness should come first. I argue acceptance. My rationale is, if you become aware of what's going on inside your body, inside your mind, inside all of it, inside your being, inside your whole experience of life, if you become aware of it, but you haven't moved through acceptance, then actually you're aware, but you're judging. So for me, it starts with not with loving yourself, but with taking small steps to just accepting exactly where you are in this moment right now.
Yeah, got to start where you're at.
You've got to start where you're at. That's exactly it. And so once you start to become accepting of who you are, then you can move towards becoming aware of what's in the unconscious, what you're doing without even knowing that you're doing it. So there's this amazing statistic that we receive 11 million sensory inputs, like per second. We can process consciously 40, 11 million coming in, 40 being processed and brought into conscious awareness. That means everything else is being stored at some level, which is what goes back to what we're talking about with the body. The mind uses...
That's mad. Hang on, let's just pause and kind of receive that for a moment. That statistic that you've given is mad.
Mental.
Yeah.
Absolutely mental.
Yeah.
And but it goes, it is mental. So if you think, and when we're talking sensory input, we're talking the texture of the air on your skin, we're talking all of the different light that's coming into your eyes, every single thing that's coming into your awareness in any given moment. And the vast majority of it is going straight into the unconscious. Yeah. Lifetime
science. That's not just like, yeah.
No, that is from a book called Bridging Spirit and Science, which is a book that I could not recommend highly enough.
I love that. I've not heard of that. I'll have to check it out.
I'll send you a link. It's literally amazing. It's the guys I was talking about at the start. It's from a professor called Dr. Bill Tiller, or Dr. William Tiller, and he wrote all of these incredible scientific books. So he's a classical, like a straight up physicist at Stanford. His career was as Dr. Tiller at Stanford, teaching and studying physics, but he had a deep spiritual awakening in his 20s. And when he was doing his postdoctoral work at Oxford University in the 60s, he always had a copy of the Bhagavad Gita with him. And so in tandem with his conventional work, he was studying consciousness, and what I love about his work is that he takes all of his knowledge about physics, not astrophysics, not subatomic physics, quantum physics, classic physics like gravity and thermodynamics, all that stuff. He takes that and he applies it to consciousness. It's just genius. So yeah, it's not actually his book. He had a student, and she deciphered his work. She's a medical doctor. She deciphered his work and wrote a book about it, because his work is like, you actually need to have a doctorate in physics to understand it.
Yeah.
Heavy. But so
can I just say, I love, only you probably could go from a question about, so how do people start their journey of sacred self-love, to talking about 40 million bits of sensory stimuli and talking about physics and consciousness. And yes, great tangent.
I live for this stuff. I literally love it. It's my mission in life to take all of the science and translate it into basically
mundane.
Into language that people who don't have science degrees can understand. And to legitimize like everything that I've experienced and all of the magic that I'm able to bring to the world through my sacred side of self-love. It needs to be legitimized. Like I was saying about you as a doctor, it brings legitimacy, because we're not just spouting information that we haven't cross-checked. We're not just spouting things without any kind of references. You know? So
Dr.
I love
it. Is it Dr. Andrew Huberman? He's got a podcast. He's doing a lot of great work around that as well. Have you heard of him?
No, I need to
send you the link. He's got a YouTube channel. So he's a neuroscientist. He was on Aubrey Marcus's podcast quite recently. He does a lot of work about bringing in bite-sized bits of neuroscience information. So talking about breathing practices and how and why they affect the brain and why you would practice them. I've only recently become aware, a colleague sent me his link actually, and was saying he'd been doing the breath practice every morning that he recommended and had really noticed the difference. But he's a very interesting person as well, with bridging consciousness and science and all of that.
Amazing. Oh, you can get me off on another tangent now though, because it's a really interesting thing to talk about, because I think we're looking in a little bit of the wrong place. I know you're a psychologist, but we love the brain, but did you know that the electromagnetic field of the heart is 5,000 times stronger than that of the brain?
I fully agree with that. There's also some really interesting, every time I do anything with Kia Miller, you know, she talks a lot about the research that's coming out. I'd have to find the link and either send it to you, post it here, about the research that's coming out about what you've just said, the electromagnetic frequency of the heart, and also coherence, heart,
brain entrainment and resonance.
You know about this. That's really fascinating as well. And that's why the coherent breathing that she teaches a lot of. I love Kia Miller. I mean, I haven't done any training with her, one day, kind of holding off to go to India, but super powerful teacher. And she, anytime she does like a week-long retreat or challenge, or like, I'm there. I love it. I love it. She's very much about the research that's coming out actually. And I was saying, I think it was it to Anne, but I was saying sometimes things start anecdotally, right? And then there's so much science out there, there's so much spirituality, but I think especially in things like women's health or specific issues, some things start anecdotally and we develop, right? Because I've always, my whole career, my whole journey as a researcher as well, you know, I've done my own research, not in this field, but in the field of working with families and listening to their stories in the educational process. But I think there is this growing sense of actually what people say to us does matter. You know, it doesn't have to be quantitative, but of course there's a huge place for the recognition of science. But yeah, that's an interesting point about neuroscience. I think there's a place for it. I think there's a place for it.
100%. Right? Yeah. Completely agree.
So step one on your sacred self-love journey, go away and read all of these studies.
Step one on your sacred self-love journey. Just come to a movement class with me or Sally and we will help you love yourselves. Done. Job done. Come hang out with us, drink in our energy field. I promise you're going to be dancing in your bikini or your mankini at the beach. You're going to be shaking the dust off. There you go, done.
Done, right. Thank you, Rach, for recommending me in your fun.
Of course, you're amazing.
Yeah, come and hang out with me or Rachel. If you're listening, you're always welcome in a class.
We are inclusive. Everyone's welcome.
Right, what a wonderful note to land on. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself. I've spent the whole time grinning from ear to ear. Thank you so much, Rachel, for your time, your energy, your wisdom. I am going to share in the description how people to connect with you, but tell us now, what's the best way of people connecting with you if they would like to?
Oh, well, you can send me a voice note on Instagram. I bloody love it when people do that. And I'll send you one back. Why not? So I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. I've got a very out-of-date website and I run a membership for sacred self-love and spiritual badassery. So there's always room for more people on that journey too.
Yes, love it. Right, thank you so much. So much. Much love. Have a beautiful rest of your day and see you. Bye, Ray.
Bye.